The relentless Kruger sun beat down, turning the abandoned survey site into a shimmering mirage. Kwame, once a passionate researcher, now merely its weary overseer, trudged through the dry scrub, the vast emptiness a mirror to his own disillusionment. His task was to periodically check on the long-defunct geological markers, a role that had devolved into little more than a paid absence. He'd barely glanced at the area in weeks. That negligence, he was about to discover, had consequences. A subtle disturbance in the air, a faint metallic scent alien to the wildernesses, drew his attention. He veered off his usual path, the sudden urge to investigate an unsettling premonition. Then he saw it, a gaping, jagged maw in the earth, an unauthorized construction trench deep and roughly dug, a scar on the ancient landscape. And at its bottom, a shape, motionless. His heart seized. It was a lion, or what was left of one. Emaciated, its magnificent coat matted with dust in its own waist, it lay sprawled in the shadow of the trench wall. Its ribs were stark protrusions beneath stretched skin, every breath a shallow, agonizing rattle. When its head slowly lifted, its eyes met Kwame's, cloudy, desperate, utterly devoid of the predator's fire. A raw surge of guilt, hot and acrid, clawed at Kwame's throat. This was his sight. This neglect, this abject suffering, was on his conscience. The park's protocol was clear: non-interference in naturally occurring wildlife incidents. But this wasn't natural. This was a man-made trap, a death sentence engineered by human carelessness. Perhaps worse. The lion's plight wasn't an act of nature. It was a consequence of the human world bleeding into the wild, a bleed Kwame had failed to staunch. His mind raced, a dizzying spiral of duty versus an overwhelming surge of compassion. To leave it was to sentence it to a slow, horrific death. To intervene was to break the ironclad rules. But the rules couldn't apply to this. This was a violation. His hands shook as he fumbled for his satellite phone, the weight of the decision pressing down on him like a physical force. He punched in the ranger's emergency number, his voice a strained whisper when Musa, the lead ranger, finally answered. "Musa, it's Kwame. I'm at the abandoned survey site. There's a lion trapped in a trench. It's bad, Musa. Really bad." He heard his own voice crack, the tremble unmistakable. While he waited for Musa and Jabari, the younger, more stoic ranger, Kwame shed his jacket, spreading it across the trench lip to cast a meager shadow over the lion's head. The sun, a relentless hammer, beat down on him, mirroring the self-reproach pounding in his own chest. He watched the lion's labored breathing, each shallow inhale a silent accusation. Every minute stretched into an eternity, filled with the searing heat and the crushing weight of his neglect. A dust cloud on the horizon announced their arrival. Musa's weathered Land Cruiser skidded to a halt. Jabari already out and striding toward the trench, his face a mask of grim professionalism. They both peered down, their experienced eyes quickly assessing the scene, the air heavy with unspoken reproof. Musa knelt, studying the emaciated animal. "Days," he stated, his voice low. "It's been here for days. Extreme dehydration, starvation. It won't last much longer." His words confirmed Kwame's worst fears, each one a fresh stab of shame. Jabari, always more clinical, remarked, "No resistance. It barely has the strength to lift its head." The observation, delivered with detached precision, cut deeper than any scolding. The lion, the king of this domain, reduced to this pathetic state, completely helpless. Kwame felt a fresh wave of nausea. "We need to get it out," Musa said, his tone shifting from assessment to urgent planning. "It's critical. We don't have much time." They began to discuss the logistics, the equipment needed, the risks involved. The conversation was terse, efficient, centered on life and death. Kwame, his face flushed with embarrassment, looked at Musa. "I swear, Musa," he said, his voice earnest, "I will personally oversee the proper securing and eventual filling of this site. This will never happen again. I promise." Musa nodded slowly, his gaze lingering on Kwame, a silent acknowledgement of the vow and the heavy price of its necessity. The rescue began. The air around the trench crackled with a new kind of energy, focused, desperate, and urgent. Musa and Jabari moved with the practiced precision of those accustomed to life or death situations, Kwame clumsily matching their pace, his guilt lending a furious determination to his movements. Ropes, thick and sturdy, were swiftly uncoiled. A heavy-duty canvas, designed for transporting large animals, was carefully laid out, its coarse texture a stark contrast to the lion's fragile existence. Each knot tied, each adjustment made, was a silent testament to the critical time ticking away. They worked as one, muscles straining, sweat beading on their foreheads. Musa and Jabari took the lead, guiding the ropes beneath the lion's inert form, while Kwame positioned himself at the animal's head, supporting its heavy skull. With a guttural grunt from Musa, they began to lift, slowly, agonizingly. The lion's weight was immense, yet its body felt unnervingly limp, a bag of bones wrapped in skin. Inch by agonizing inch, the magnificent creature, once a symbol of power, was hoisted from the dark embrace of its earthen prison. Kwame gripped the support rope so tightly his knuckles turned white, the rough fibers biting into his palms. This was his penance, his fight for a second chance, not just for the lion, but for his own fractured conscience. Every tremor in the rope was a fresh stab of fear, every strained breath his own, amplified. Mid-lift, as the lion cleared the lip of the trench and was gently lowered onto the waiting canvas, something profound happened. Its eyelids, crusted with dust, flickered open. For a fleeting moment, its amber eyes, clouded with suffering but undeniably alive, locked onto Kwame's. It wasn't a growl, not a roar, not even a blink of fear. It was an unexpected awareness, a flicker of intelligence, and in that deep gaze, Kwame imagined he saw a silent, profound gratitude. The connection was visceral, an invisible thread woven between them that deepened Kwame's resolve. With utmost care, they bundled the fragile body. A thermal blanket was draped over it, a small barrier against the harsh elements it had endured for so long. The canvas handles were gripped, and with a final surge of combined strength, the lion was efficiently, yet tenderly, moved to the back of Musa's waiting rescue vehicle. The heavy thud as it settled seemed to echo the beating of Kwame's own heart. Then, with a roar of its engine, the Land Cruiser sped away, leaving behind a swirling cloud of red dust in the now empty trench. It was a desperate race against time, across the sun-baked plains, towards the distant promise of the Kruger Veterinary Station. Every bump in the road, every sudden turn, felt like a fresh assault on the animal's dwindling life force. Kwame, sitting beside Jabari in the front, kept glancing back, willing the vehicle to go faster. At the clinic, a stark, sterile environment, the critical lion was immediately rushed into emergency treatment. Bright, unyielding fluorescent lights illuminated its weakened form as veterinarians and technicians moved with rapid practice efficiency. The air hummed with controlled chaos, equipment whirring, hushed voices exchanging vital information. The head veterinarian, a woman with weary but determined eyes, delivered the grim diagnosis. Extreme dehydration, nearing complete organ failure. It's critical. It's a miracle it's even alive. Her words, though professional, carried an undertone of grave concern, solidifying the severity of the situation. We need immediate, aggressive medical intervention. Right now. A thick intravenous line was swiftly inserted into the lion's pale foreleg, a transparent drip of life-sustaining fluids beginning its slow, steady journey into its system. Each drop was a silent prayer, a fragile promise of potential renewal. This was the first, most crucial step, a desperate attempt to pull the magnificent creature back from the precipice. For the entire first day, the lion remained motionless on the examination table, its breathing shallow, barely perceptible. Kwame, Musa, and Jabari maintained a constant, anxious vigil, their faces etched with worry. They spoke little, their shared gaze fixed on the rise and fall of the lion's chest, a silent testament to their collective hope against the overwhelming odds. The vigil continued, each hour a testament to the fragile hold on life. Then, on the second day, a subtle shift occurred. The lion's breathing, though still shallow, became steadier, less ragged. The fine tremor that had rippled through its gaunt frame seemed to lessen. These were not grand improvements, but to Kwame, Musa, and Jabari, they were monumental, tiny flickers of hope in the vast darkness of uncertainty. The true breakthrough came on the third day. The veterinarian, her face now alight with a relieved smile, approached them. "It's incredible," she announced, her voice barely containing her excitement. "This morning he sat upright on his own. He drank an entire bowl of water, and he's even accepted small portions of meat." Kwame felt a wave of profound relief wash over him, a physical weight lifting from his shoulders. The lion was fighting. Kwame rushed to the recovery enclosure, his heart pounding with anticipation. There it was, the majestic creature, no longer a crumpled heap of despair, but sitting tall, its head held high. Its amber eyes, once dim and desperate, now held a renewed focus, a spark of the wild spirit returning. The sight was profoundly moving, a testament to resilience and the unwavering power of life. Kwame felt a swell of pride, intertwined with the deep sense of his own redemption. Musa, always pragmatic, observed the rapid progress with a thoughtful frown. "This recovery is remarkably faster than we anticipated," he noted, his gaze lingering on the lion. "It speaks volumes about its will to live." It was an extraordinary turnaround, a recovery that defied typical expectations for an animal so close to death, a testament to the lion's innate strength. From that day forward, the gains were visible, almost hourly. The lion visibly gained strength, progressing from sitting upright to wobbly standing, then to taking more purposeful steps within its secure temporary enclosure. Each day, its movements grew surer, its posture more upright. Jabari, usually reserved, became an almost constant presence. He faithfully arrived each morning, carrying fresh, prime cuts of meat, silently encouraging the impressive recovery process. The lion, in turn, began to respond to his calm presence, accepting the offerings with a newfound dignity. A week later, the transformation was undeniable. The hollows beneath its eyes had filled out, its fur regaining some of its former sheen. Its gaze was now alert, its posture dignified, a palpable sense of its former majesty returning with every purposeful stride. The emaciated victim had been replaced by a recovering king, a powerful echo of its true self. The veterinarians, satisfied with its progress, confirmed what they all knew. "He's ready," the head vet declared, her smile genuine. "Ready to leave the emergency facility for a semi-wild enclosure within the park. He needs more space, more of his natural environment to fully recover before release." As the date for the transfer approached, and Kwame watched the lion move with a newfound determination, his thoughts began to drift back to the abandoned trench. The lion's rapid recovery, while astonishing, underscored the utter helplessness of its entrapment. The trench itself, so crude and unauthorized, had always nagged at him. It wasn't a natural ditch, it was clearly excavated. But for what? A growing unease settled in his stomach, a quiet whisper that this incident was more than just simple neglect. Kwame, Musa, and Jabari stood together, watching the lion, their faces alight with a shared sense of pride. This wasn't just a successful rescue, it felt like something deeper. In the lion's renewed strength, in the quiet dignity it now carried, they sensed a profound significance, a promise of something more than mere survival. A king had been brought back from the brink, and perhaps, in doing so, they had stumbled upon something far greater than themselves. Despite the profound relief of the lion's recovery, a knot of unease persisted in Kwame's stomach. The trench, its existence, its crude nature, the sheer scale of it for an abandoned survey site. It didn't add up. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something crucial, something dangerous. Driven by this nagging suspicion, Kwame began to discreetly research the site, diving into old park records and archive permits. He revisited the area, no longer burdened by guilt, but armed with a fresh pair of eyes. This time, he wasn't just observing, he was searching. Beneath a pile of dried brush, tucked away in a shallow crevice, he discovered discarded equipment. It wasn't the standard low-tech geological markers he was familiar with. These were sleek, sophisticated devices, advanced ground-penetrating radar units, seismic sensors, and high-frequency communication gear. This was high-tech geological survey equipment, not typical for simple park development, and certainly not something that would be casually abandoned. The discovery sent a chill down his spine. Over coffee one evening while discussing the lion's remarkable recovery, Kwame subtly steered the conversation to the old survey site. Musa, leaning back in his chair, stirred his mug thoughtfully. Funny you mentioned that area, Kwame, he began, his voice dropping slightly. There's been talk, for a while now, hushed stories amongst the old rangers, unusual corporate interest in some of the peripheral regions of the park, sudden abandonments too. Like someone was there one day, then gone the next, leaving no trace. Jabari, usually taciturn, nodded in agreement, his eyes narrowed. I heard similar whispers about strange activity near the eastern boundary a few months back. They disappear faster than hyenas with a fresh kill. The ranger's anecdotes fueled Kwame's suspicions. He delved deeper, sifting through public records, cross-referencing land lease agreements with registered corporate entities. He eventually uncovered a trail leading to a shell corporation, Apex Resources. The name meant nothing to him, yet the records showed they had secured leases for environmental impact assessments in the area of the abandoned trench. What struck Kwame was that Apex had abruptly ceased operations months prior, leaving the site as a silent testament to their unexplained departure. Kwame's detailed investigation revealed glaring discrepancies. Apex Resources' stated intentions were for environmental surveys, activities that typically involve minimal ground disturbance. Yet the deep, irregular trench he'd found was far more invasive than any environmental survey would require. It was a crude, hastily excavated pit, looking more like an exploratory mining shaft than a scientific endeavor. The pieces didn't fit, not by a long shot. He tried calling official channels, trying to get more information about Apex. His inquiries were met with unusual silence. Transferred from department to department, his calls ended in vague dismissals or simply went unanswered. It was as if Apex Resources had vanished into thin air, leaving no trace and no one wanted to talk about it. The silence was louder than any answer could have been, confirmation that something was very wrong. Back at the semi-wild enclosure, the rescued lion was thriving. But when Kwame visited, the animal's gaze felt different. It observed him with an intensity that seemed to transcend mere animal instinct. Its eyes, deep and knowing, followed Kwame's every movement, a silent, powerful presence. It was as if the lion understood, acting as a watchful primal guardian. Then came the email, anonymous, untraceable. The subject line was blank. The message itself was chillingly brief. Drop it, some things are best left alone. It was not a question, but a command. The implicit threat resonated deep within Kwame, confirming his worst fears. He was stepping on dangerous ground. Kwame immediately called Musa and Jabari, asking them to meet him at his secluded cabin. He laid out all his findings, the discarded equipment, the Apex Resources Shell Corporation, the disturbing discrepancies, the official silence, and the anonymous email. Musa's expression grew increasingly grave as Kwame spoke, Jabari's usually impassive face tightening with concern. This is not just a neglected site, Musa stated, his voice low. This is something far bigger. The trio looked at each other, the weight of their discovery settling heavily upon them. They had stumbled upon a potential corporate conspiracy, one that had endangered a lion and was now sending anonymous threats. A conspiracy far larger than a neglected construction site, stretching into the shadowy world of illegal operations within the park. The path ahead was dangerous, but there was no turning back. If you're gripped by this story, if the idea of a sinister conspiracy lurking beneath the wild beauty of Kruger has you on the edge of your seat, then you absolutely cannot miss what happens next. The stakes are escalating, and our heroes are walking straight into a hornet's nest. So make sure you hit that like button, share this video with everyone you know, and subscribe so you don't miss a single crucial detail of this thrilling saga. The small cabin became their war room. Maps were spread across the rough-hewn table, overlaid with satellite images Kwame had painstakingly accessed. The three men pooled their resources, their shared knowledge of the park combining with Kwame's tech-savvy research skills. Musa, with his deep institutional memory, recalled other strange occurrences, forgotten details that suddenly clicked into place. Jabari, with his ranger's instinct for tracking and observation, provided context for remote areas. Kwame, meanwhile, relentlessly sifted through fragmented digital data, cross-referencing, piecing together a terrifying mosaic. What they uncovered chilled them to the bone. The sophisticated equipment wasn't for environmental surveys, it was for prospecting. Apex Resources, under the thin veneer of environmental research, was a front for illegal mining operations. And worse, there was damning evidence linking them to systematic poaching. Rare minerals, perhaps even diamonds, lay hidden beneath the park's surface, and the company was systematically exploiting the land and its wildlife for profit. The abandoned trench, then, wasn't just neglect. It was either a failed, hastily abandoned illegal excavation, or perhaps, horrifyingly, a deliberate trap. A deep, unassuming pit designed to incapacitate large animals, making them easy targets for poachers seeking ivory or other valuable parts. The thought twisted Kwame's gut. During their clandestine meetings held in the hushed quiet of the evenings, Kwame noticed something unnerving about the lion. Whenever he discussed apex resources, detailing the chilling evidence of their exploitation, the lion in its enclosure would become restless. It would pace, a low rumble often vibrating in its chest, its eyes fixed on Kwame with an almost human understanding. It was as if the animal, rescued from Apex's casual brutality, instinctively sensed the renewed threat, a silent, furry barometer of danger. Kwame, revisiting the discarded equipment's internal memory, managed to extract a specific GPS coordinate. It pointed to a location deep within a less patrolled section of the park, surprisingly close to the original trench, suggesting a hidden data cache or a secondary, more secretive site. The data, though fragmented, hinted at a central hub for their illegal operations. This wasn't a random occurrence. It was a well-organized network. The realization that official channels were compromised, that the very authorities meant to protect the park might have been infiltrated or silenced, solidified their resolve. Musa's earlier frustration with the vague dismissals now made Chilmerata. Kwame, Musa, and Jabari knew they couldn't trust anyone else. They had to investigate the suspected secondary site themselves. The decision was made with grim determination, a pact forged in the flickering lamplight. As they began their preparations, a pervasive sense of being watched settled over them. The vast, familiar African savannah, once a sanctuary, suddenly felt different. Every rustle in the bush, every distant call seemed imbued with a new, sinister undertone. It felt less like home and more like hostile territory, where unseen eyes tracked their movements. Their fears were confirmed with brutal clarity. One afternoon, as Jabari was returning from a supply run, a dark, unmarked vehicle, too new and out of place for park traffic, was spotted tailing his truck. It maintained a discreet distance, a silent, menacing shadow. Jabari, using his rearview mirror, noticed the subtle, professional way it handled, the lack of official markings. It wasn't a local. It was a warning, a final, undeniable confirmation that they had been found out, that they were now targets. The trio now understood the immense danger they faced. They were up against powerful, ruthless forces, shadowy figures willing to sacrifice anything, even magnificent wildlife, for a profit. They prepared for a dangerous covert operation, each man understanding the risks, but bound by a shared sense of duty and a fierce loyalty to the park and its creatures. This was no longer just about a rescued lion. It was about exposing a rot that threatened the very heart of the wilderness. As they moved towards their vehicle, ready to depart for the unknown, the lion in its enclosure let out a low, guttural growl. Its eyes, burning with an ancient wisdom, were fixed on Kwame. It wasn't a roar of aggression, but a deep, resonant sound that resonated through the evening air, an unspoken warning, or perhaps a primal blessing for the dangerous journey ahead. Under the shroud of a moonless sky, Kwame, Musa, and Jabari moved like ghosts through the dense scrubland. The air was thick with the scent of dry earth and distant wild jasmine, a stark contrast to the coiled tension in their muscles. Their target, the secondary apex site, lay frustratingly close to the original trench where they had found the lion. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig beneath their boots, sent a jolt of adrenaline through them. This was no longer about investigation. It was infiltration. They found it tucked into a natural depression, cleverly camouflaged. Not a full-blown camp, but a sophisticated semi-underground structure. Inside, the hum of electronics confirmed their fears. They swiftly located a small server rack, a treasure trove of damning data. Beside it, stacks of high-powered rifles and specialized poaching gear lay ready. As Kwame furiously downloaded data onto a hardened drive, Musa and Jabari stood guard, their senses heightened. Then the world exploded. A harsh beam of light sliced through the darkness, followed by the guttural shouts of men. Freeze! A team of armed Apex security personnel, clad in tactical gear, emerged from the shadows, their weapons already raised. They had walked into an ambush. A desperate struggle ensued. No words were exchanged, only the sharp crack of branches underfoot, the thud of bodies, and the strained grunts of effort. Musa and Jabari, seasoned rangers, moved with brutal efficiency, using the familiar terrain to their advantage, fading into the darkness and reappearing with swift, disarming blows. Kwame, less experienced in combat, focused on protecting the precious data drive, ducking and weaving, a blur of panicked motion, but resolute. The trained operatives, though superior in numbers, were disoriented by the Rangers' guerrilla tactics and the sheer audacity of their intrusion. Just as an operative pinned Kwame against a rocky outcrop, the barrel of a rifle pressing cold against his temple, a terrifying sound ripped through the night. A deep, resonant roar echoed through the valley, shaking the very ground beneath them. It was unmistakable. The lion. Before anyone could react, the rescued lion, somehow having escaped its enclosure or perhaps followed their scent through the vast wilderness, burst into the clearing. Its eyes, luminous in the dim light, fixed on Kwame, its savior. With a primal scream of fury, it launched itself at the nearest Apex personnel. Chaos erupted. The operatives, caught completely off guard, scattered in terror, their trained discipline crumbling under the unleashed fury of a king. The lion, a magnificent blur of teeth and claws, became a whirlwind of protective instinct, striking down those closest to Kwame, creating the diversion they desperately needed. Seizing the opportunity, Musa and Jabari moved with renewed vigor. They subdued the remaining disoriented guards, disarming them quickly. Kwame, his heart still hammering, secured the critical evidence drive and scrambled to his feet. They escaped into the night, the lion's roars echoing behind them, covering their retreat. The Apex operation was left in disarray, its dark secrets exposed by the courage of 3 men and the untamed spirit of one magnificent beast. They drove without looking back, the data drive clutched tightly in Kwame's hand, the key to their victory. The evidence, comprehensive and undeniable, was delivered to uncompromised authorities, individuals Musa had trusted for years. The fallout was swift and devastating. Apex Resources was publicly exposed, its network of illegal mining and poaching operations dismantled, its corrupt leaders brought to justice. The vast, intricate web of deceit unraveled, thanks to the lion and those who fought for it. The lion, having played its pivotal role, was never seen in captivity again. Rangers later spotted it, a magnificent silhouette against a Kruger sunset, disappearing into the vast African savannah, truly free. Its journey from a forgotten trench to a symbol of justice, complete. Kwame, Musa, and Jabari often reflected on their incredible journey. The lion, once a victim of their neglect, had become their protector, a silent partner in their fight. The bond forged between them, born of guilt, compassion, and shared danger, was unbreakable. It stood as a powerful symbol of their relentless fight for justice and the enduring survival of the wild heart of Africa, forever entwined with the roar of a free king. The agonizing roar that never left Kwame's memory wasn't heard, but deeply felt as he stared down at the shocking scene. A legendary predator, transformed into a helpless victim, its body just bones covered by dusty skin, cloudy eyes silently begging for help, life fading with each labored breath. That moment, witnessing such fragility, ignited a fire within him that would forever change his life. What began as a desperate rescue of a single lion, fighting for its last precious drop of hope against impossible odds, spiraled into an incredible journey. Kwame's heart, racing wildly against his chest, moved him to defy protocol, saving not just an animal, but uncovering a dark corporate conspiracy that threatened the very soul of Kruger. With Musa and Jabari and the lion's own astonishing, instinct-driven return, they brought justice to the savannah. The once abandoned trench, a chilling symbol of neglect and exploitation, became the starting point for a tale of courage, exposing ruthless forces and forging an unbreakable bond between man and beast. It proved that even in the face of overwhelming odds, The wild heart of Africa and those who fight for it will prevail. This incredible rescue and the profound truth it unveiled left them and all who witnessed it speechless.